and how that is done. This is nowhere near that level of intensity, and it is an important aspect of the campaign, especially with this very critical campaign. I mean, for both candidates. And I do feel that as Americans, we are owed a structure that lends to the candidates being candid based on the information that they have and that they're willing to present to the American people.
So, caller, what would that structure be?
It's as your guest is stating. It's a structure where the candidates are speaking to each other. They're not sound bites. The YouTube was going in the direction of a less scripted debate, and I do think that the debates are less scripted when you have the parties running against each other, the Democratic candidates versus the Republican, and their debates, and the Republican candidates and their debates. But when the field narrows, so does the ability to be more truthful.
Ma'am, I agree with you completely. It's important that people know. People often watch these debates and they say, well, why are these so bad? This is so frustrating. What's going on? Why is this happening? And they don't know. They have no idea that Lindsey Graham and Rahm Emanuel, a Republican senator on behalf of the McCain campaign and Democratic congressman on behalf of the Obama campaign, met in D.C. weeks before the debate and hammered out an actual physical paper contract that structures the rules of these debates. The previous contracts include provisions like the candidates cannot talk to each other. The candidates cannot ask each other questions. So when you're yelling at your TV screen and saying, come on guys, actually talk to each other, part of the reason is because they have designed these formats, they have structured these formats to avoid each of them having to actually take any political risk. And it's this lack of transparency that frustrates us most. If Obama and McCain want to hold a debate, they can hold it anywhere. They can hold it in their living rooms. They can hold it on Capitol Hill. Everyone's going to watch. It's going to be fascinating. But at least if they held their own debate and their rules were made public, they would be held accountable for them. You could blame their campaigns for sanitizing the format, their campaigns for excluding a popular third-party candidate, their campaigns for not operating with transparency. But now we don't blame the candidates. We blame the commission. And the commission doesn't care because it's a private corporation.
What about the locations for these debates?
Well, that's actually been a really controversial issue this year, Pedro. New Orleans desperately wanted a presidential debate post-Katrina. They wanted to raise issues. Newspapers around the country, the vast majority of them actually, that are national newspapers, backed that New Orleans would actually be able to hold a presidential debate there. They were extremely disappointed when the commission rejected them. Instead, the commission has held a debate in St. Louis since 1992, every 4 years. It's the only site that's been picked more than once since the commission took over the presidential debates in 1988. Why? Part of the reason why is because Anheuser-Busch, which is headquartered in St. Louis, is the principal contributor to the Commission on Presidential Debates. Another reason why, one of the members of this commission is former Republican Senator John Danforth. His brother was the chancellor of the Washington University in St. Louis. He is currently on the board of trustees, and the campus is named after their family. So with these political connections, corporate sponsorship, they keep going back to St. Louis and have rejected New Orleans and the people there who were desperate for the economic input and the political attention.
Kansas City, Missouri, for our line, for others. Go ahead, you're on with George Farah.
Yes, Mr. Farah.
Hi.
It's so good to see you. I tell you, I've been looking for you. I've been a fan of yours since you started Open Debates. It would be the greatest thing in the world, and you are, as was said earlier, a breath of fresh air. Please do not ever stop. Schieffer and Brokaw are pathetic as moderators, and, of course, Moyers would be great. And although I've been a registered Democrat forever and ever and usually have voted Democrat, local, state, and national, I will be voting this time for the real patriot, the most brilliant and intelligent person and the hardest working, and the one that everybody is so afraid of, and that would be Mr. Ralph Nader. So please keep on, and if only we could have the open debates with Ralph Nader. I mean, everybody would be so grateful, and it would make the others not seem so afraid. If they are so afraid of Ralph Nader, what else can they do in the world? And by the way, I think Bush, the only reason he started this war, I think 9/11 helped him, but he would have gone to war anyway because he was going definitely to get a second term because his father only got a first term.
Ma'am, thank you for your kind words and your support. First, I just want to mention maybe why the significance of third parties being on these debates is relevant. A lot of people say, well, they have no chance of victory. First, that's not true. The Republican Party was once a third party. It raised the abolition of slavery as a central platform. It became a major party. Jesse Ventura, running for governor of Minnesota, he was at 10% in the polls. The League of Women Voters there and NPR sponsored alternate debates. 10 debates, he rose from 10% to 37%, became the next governor of Minnesota. So they can win. Second is that third parties that are supported by a tremendous amount of people in this country will raise critical issues that the major party candidates are ignoring. Unemployment compensation, Social Security, abolition of slavery, women's right to vote, child labor laws, 40-hour work week, minimum wage. These were all issues raised by third-party candidates that the major party candidates were not addressing, maybe in part because they were receiving significant financial contributions. And these third-party candidates broke the bipartisan silence on this issue, forced the major parties to pay attention, and then seized the issue and made it a central platform of their campaign. We're not supporting any particular third-party candidate. If the American people just want two candidates, we just want, we think there ought to be two. We just want a debate commission that will realize the aspirations of the American people.
It says that you're a member of the board of directors of the Citizens Debate Commission.
We created something in 2000 in conjunction with 60 other democratic, pro-democracy civic groups in this country called the Citizens Debate Commission. Our aspiration was to have this ultimately replace the Commission on Presidential Debates. On its board are people from all over the political spectrum, from the far right to the far left. We've got people like Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, Paul Weyrich, founder of the Heritage Foundation on the right, Randall Robinson, founder of the Trans-Africa Forum, the head of MTV's Rock the Vote. So it's a diverse commission. The problem is we can't break the Commission's monopoly so far. Even though 40 different newspapers editorialize in support of us, every pro-democracy group we can think of is backing us, the candidates will not participate in our debates. But, Pedro, we can break this monopoly. The candidates are ultimately asking for our vote. And if it becomes too expensive for them to participate in exclusionary, stilted format debates, they will come to our debates. If we can pressure them enough to participate in democratic, inclusive presidential debates, we will win. And I think it's just a matter of time.
And Open Debates, what is that? Open
Debates is the organization I run. The website is opendebates.org. I'd appreciate if people took a peek at it. And our fundamental purpose is to make sure that our presidential debates realize their potential. And that means replacing the Commission on Presidential Debates and putting the debates back in the hands of an organization like the League of Women Voters that's accountable not to the two major parties, but to you, the American people.
One more call on our line for Senator McCain, Long Beach Island.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Echeverria and Mr. Farah. I wonder, Mr. Farah, if you could give us some insider information about the commission and the commission chairman, Mr. Kirk and Mr. Fahrenkopf. For example, I know that Mr. Fahrenkopf is employed by the gaming industry from Las Vegas as a highly paid lobbyist. But do the chairman, Mr. Kirk and Mr. Fahrenkopf, receive a salary from the commission, or are they volunteering their time? And I think that the conflict of interest relative to their other activities and employment is questionable.
Sir, thank you for that excellent question. Frank Fahrenkopf and Paul Kirk are the co-chairmen of the Commission on Presidential Debates. They have been for 20 years, since its inception. This is not an organization that constantly changes its leadership. They're in permanent control. Who are these guys? Frank Fahrenkopf is the former chairman of the Republican National Committee. Paul Kirk is the former chairman of the Democratic National Committee. They're also registered lobbyists. Paul Kirk has lobbied on behalf of the pharmaceutical industry at some point, and Frank Fahrenkopf is the nation's leading gambling lobbyist. He is the head of the American Gaming Association. These are the guys deciding how our debates ought to operate. And the problem isn't that they're pushing for pro-gambling issues during the debate. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. There's no evidence that their lobbying directly influenced the content of the debate. That's too conspiratorial, and there's no basis to make that assertion. However, it is indicative of the fact that these are people willing to compromise the interest of the American people for their own political or private interest. They're paid lobbyists. They have no problem giving money to candidates, giving money to elected officials, and asking them to pervert our legislation. So again, they will have no problem taking control of this commission, perverting the presidential debates, putting in the hands of various Republican Democratic campaigns, and undermining what we, the American people, deserve and what the public interest is.
George Farah of Open Debates, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, Pedro.
We're going to continue on our debate theme. Joining us in just a few minutes is Susan Drucker from Hofstra University, the site of tonight's debate. We'll talk about the television influences and the format. We'll be right back.
Tonight, the third and final presidential debate.